Hi, this is Chrissy Incognito, and welcome to another episode of my channel. Now, you might be wondering why I'm incognito. This is my alter ego that can say things that I cannot otherwise say unless I was incognito. So, thank you for returning. In order to understand more about this episode, please view the previous episode. Happy listening.
Also, a big thing at the time is I didn't know I was decompensating, which means that I was getting worse and worse, and I did not see it. I knew something wasn't right. I knew that I was presenting with this very odd thinking, but I could not tell you what it was. I just figured it was stress, but I also knew that stress didn't present like this. Like people got like overwhelmed, they might have cried, they might have removed themselves from a situation where somebody was stressed. I've never heard of counting and checking due to stress, okay? So I didn't really know what to make of it. Obviously this is 1993. There is no internet, and you I mean, this really wasn't anything that was talked about. It was known, but it wasn't really anything that was known. I did realize that like kind of the walls were closing in on me with how I was feeling and what I was doing, but um I could not tell you that what it was. And so I went like this for a while. I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was anxiety. Um, but anxiety again doesn't present like this. Um, so I didn't really know what it was, and there was really nothing to reference. Like there was no you look it up in Google or you do something like that. You would basically have to know what it is and then read up on it and then figure out what's going on. So I knew something wasn't right, and I knew it was really not right. It wasn't just like, "Oh, you have a little of this," or "I have" it started to become, isolating. I started to isolate myself and not trust going around people, not trust myself. How do I know I locked the car? How do I know I locked the door? Um, if I didn't, that means people could get hurt from my neglect or whatever it was. So I went on with life. I tried to kind of cover it up the best I could, but it was getting worse. Okay. So I'm in school. I'm having all of this occurrences. I just kind of figured it was because I started college and this was just a transition period. So what happened was one day, now you got to remember, I'm scared of germs and contamination and all of this kind of stuff. So one day I looked in my mouth and there was all this stuff in my mouth. Okay. And I showed my dad and I said, like, do you think I should go to the dentist because it's mouth related? It's all throughout my mouth. I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness, I have cancer. Look at it all spread and in there and white and flaky." And I just didn't know what it was. So we went, and my dad came in with me, and the doctor came in and said to me, um, "I wanna talk to you alone." I was like, "Oh," I was like, "That can't be good. He knows I'm dying. He sees it, and he wants to tell me in private that I'm dying." Um, so my dad goes out, and the first thing he says to me is, "Are you HIV positive?" I was like, "No." Like, it's nothing that I was ever tested for, and I my head started to spin. So now I'm thinking, Michael, maybe Michael gave me something, right? Even though we use condoms every single time and we both were virgins and whatnot, it's like now I was like, Maybe Michael gave me something and he was doing stuff behind my back, drugs or whatever, and he didn't tell me." Then I'm thinking, no, it's Eric. It's the crack addict. Even though we didn't have sex, we did other things. He's the one that gave me this. And I'm freaking out. I'm in the middle of this contamination nightmare. I mean, I have so much crap in my head. I don't need anything else to add to this, right? To make me even more crazy and insane. And I said, "I never did, drugs intravenous. I've never had a blood transfusion, and I don't think I was ever with somebody who had HIV." And he's like, "Okay, do you wanna tell your dad or do you want me to tell him?" And I was like, "You tell him because I don't even know what's happening right now." Okay? So my dad comes in and the guy is like, the doctor's like, "She needs to be tested for HIV. She has thrush." Now, a lot of you out there may be like, "Oh, my baby has thrush, my this has thrush, my that." It's a very common thing, just like everybody who ever gets pneumonia doesn't have HIV. But a lot of people with HIV get pneumonia. It was the same thing. That thrush is a very common whatever. I think it's a fungus or something. I'm not really sure. Don't quote me on it there. It's very, very common. Again, you can't look up anything. You have no place to start because you would have to know, you'd have to go to the library and be like, okay, what would that be under? Like, I don't even know what that would be under. You would have to know more about it to look up what was happening. And so he arranged for me to get blood work. And I'm like, "This is it. This is what I've been freaking out about." It got me. The germs got me, right? Because that's all I kept thinking about is contamination and germs. I'm sorry. Contamination and germs and all of this stuff, and now it's got me, and I don't even know how I got it. I mean, you know. So I go for blood work, and it took 2 weeks to get the results back, which is a really long time when you think you have something serious. So I'm trying to think where I could have picked it up from. Where could I have gotten this? Where can I have gotten this? And I really didn't know. I assumed it was Eric because he was high risk and we did stuff. Um, so that's all I could think about, that it was Eric. And so those 2 weeks were horrible, as you can imagine. And I went and so they called me and they said the results were in. And I said, "Okay, can I can the doctor tell me what it is?" And they're like, "No, we always give this news in person." So I'm like, "Well, that can't be good." Sorry. That can't be good. So me and my parents go because I was about like 19 or something at this time. And I needed moral support. They go. And the doctor winds up telling me that it was negative. But of course, I don't believe him. I don't believe him. And so I said, "Well, why do I have this?" And he's like, "Well, it can be due to stress. You could have picked it up. Like you could have been somewhere and put something in your mouth that had it on it or however it was." And so this sent me in to a spiral. Okay. Now I can't trust anything because I don't know how I got this. I mean, was I stressed out? Yes. Has there been times in my life that I was completely beyond stress? Yes, and I didn't get it. And it was only years later did I read up on it. Now, thrush is a very common symptom when you're HIV infected. So is pneumonia, but every person with pneumonia doesn't mean they have HIV. So I was like, that's it, that's it, that's it. So I started going crazy. My OCD started to go in overdrive. And I was counting and I was isolating and I was having panic attacks and I couldn't leave the house. And if I was out somewhere, I would all of a sudden something would come over me and I'd have to bolt out of there and go home. Like literally, like somebody was after me. I knew no one was after me, but that's how it felt. My flight or fight instinct went into overdrive. So if I was somewhere and I started to feel anxious about something, and it's not really rational. So it's not like, oh, every time I see an ice cream truck, it sends me into panic. It's not consistent unless you look for the consistency. And chances are there really isn't any. So I would be at the store and all of a sudden I had to flee or I was going to die. That's how my body reacted to whatever it was that I was experiencing at that time. I'd run home. I started to wash my hands in bleach and Comet because I never felt that they were clean. Um, you know, changed my clothes 1,000 times a day, which it seemed like, um, took a bunch of showers daily. It was just getting out of control. And at this time, I'm trying to work because I was still trying to work and I was going to school. So I'm trying to function and keep it all under control so I don't completely snap and fall apart.